Stefan Bummel, who will talk to you about Internet identity of things.
Thank you very much. So, first of all, good afternoon to everybody, and I'm happy to be here to talk to you about something which is quite different, I guess, to what you've been hearing today earlier, because this is more like a technical event, and my talk is more discussing things in a later, mature stage when it comes to scalability issues, how to deploy IoT applications into the mass, and where you really have to consider impact on people, on users, and so on. So it's really not technical. So I think it's a good one for the afternoon when everybody is already a little bit tired from all the sessions earlier. So basically, what is the Internet of Things? I think you've heard a lot of talks earlier today. So basically, it's everything, or it can be everything, and I prefer the term cyber-physical environments instead of Internet of Things, because effectively it's not putting some gadgets to the Internet. It's about your environment becomes cyber-physical. So it's something which is physical plus cyber. So this transition, where you take everything what you do today in a physical manner, will be available or will be supported also by electronic means, so getting something into virtual stuff. So to understand what I'm trying to say, I want to give you some impression about how we work today in the real world, and what is identity in our daily reality. So all people work according to this, but most of them do consider what this actually means. So identity, the identity of a doctor in our daily life is implemented by someone having a white clothes and maybe some location based. So if you find someone looking like the first lady in a hospital, you will be sure he's a doctor, but nobody is checking if this lady will be able to treat you correctly. But we feel comfortable with that. You know, in our daily world, you open the door and having a policeman giving you some piece of metal plate or whatever, it gives him the identity and the authority to do whatever he's doing. So it's getting even more strange. The most important thing that people do have, like the children, you give them to a lady because she's the oldest one at a place where kindergarten is placed on. And this is something you can't do in the virtual world, because you don't have this location there, and you don't have this environment where you are in there to do some decisions. The second important factor is the ownership. In the real world, if you own something, you put it into your home, for example, so that you have access to it alone, and that you can decide who else can have access to a device. If you interconnect devices, then you don't have this border of your home or this storage anymore to have the access. So you need to find other means to have the control of ownership. So if I have a gadget which is connected to the internet, where I have access, having control of it, and I sell it to you, and you put it into your house, I still have the ownership, the virtual ownership of the device independent of the location. So these basic questions of how we do work today with very basic stuff is changing when getting into a cyber-physical environment. Today, if you sell something, for example, basically you're buying a fridge. The contract is very simple. You are in a purchase deal, so you have some terms and conditions that you typically are accepting, and then over the period of usage, maybe 10 years, you don't need to talk to anyone anymore. But if you have the fridge connected to the internet, you typically need to have additional services. Basically something which is running in the cloud. Basically you need to have a service contract with the supplier to get software updates still in place. And you know, however, whenever it comes to software, you have very extensive contracts and terms and conditions and whatever, what nobody is reading. So when you come from the physical one, where you have the control into something which is getting more complex, people are not able to have or keep control over it anymore, and you lose control. So to still get these big use cases that can be done with the help of cyber-physical environments in place, you need to take care, and this is why I'm happy to talk to you, even though it's a more technical event, because some things need to be implemented from the very earliest, need to be designed into systems. You can't put it, attach it afterwards on the like privacy. Privacy is something you need to do it bottom up from the first day of the architecture, like security. If you try to do it on top later on, you will fail. So to get to the real success of the environment, you need to take care about scalability and sustainability. And there is some key factors are very important, like user acceptance. User acceptance, trust is the key element. Another important part is the integration to service providers. So to get it seamless, that you don't have single islands, you need to be interconnected between all those use cases to have, you know, the real environment where you have use cases through all the domains working well. For all the providers offering services, you need to have good business cases, because as long as there are no business cases, also in the longer term, you won't have the sustainability in the system, in the environment, because it's easy to sell you a fridge on the one hand, but then considering you need to support it, maintain and support it for the next 10 years is a different story. So business cases for the whole application set is something which really needs to be considered. And last but not least, privacy and security is extremely important. From a security point of view, the possible impact, if you consider what kind of use cases can be targeted by IoT applications and technology, from utility to your healthcare part to your mobility life, the possible impact is dramatical. So from safety, if you have, for example, a car, and if you hack the car, you could have direct impact on your health by weaknesses in the security that is implemented. And then, of course, the problem is how to deal with security. Classical approaches that we did in the past in the classic IT environment are simply not working anymore. So, for example, what has been done, it was always, everyone tried to implement the procedures that are done in the real world, also in the cyber world. So what we did is to create a perimeter, to create firewalls, so to create something like your home, where you put your assets into and feel protected around it. But with the IoT environment, or with the applications where you have mobility, it's simply not working to have a perimeter there anymore. So the old security concepts are simply not working. You need to deal with different other things. For example, security very much, a very big topic is to have updates, security updates available. You are aware that you have to update your phone, your computer, But do you update on a daily basis your fridge, your car, your watch, your whatever, to keep your security up to date? And if you end up with not a single device, but 50, 100 devices that are connected to the internet, you also need to manage your own domain. So consider that every user becomes a network administrator to manage his own network infrastructure. And this is also a topic of total cost of ownership. So the product itself is quite cheap and affordable. It's not expensive to make a network interface, to put some controllers, some software into a product. But to deploy it, to manage it, it's more expensive because you need to create services around it. And then to keep it over the next period of maybe 10 years in the life and have it maintained, this is the biggest cost factor in there. So you can compare it with a picture which is very often used. So if you compare it with the classical IT, the initial purchase price of a PC is roughly 40 to 50% of the overall expenses over the usage period when it is in a managed environment. So for a company giving you a desktop PC, they have to calculate with more than 3,000 euros per year as a total cost of ownership, where you have your administrators, your services, your service contracts, and everything on top. And you know that a PC itself is much lower from the pricing. So whenever it comes to applications with cyber-physical gadgets, you also need to consider that if you buy the fridge, basically the fridge is not only 500 euros, so you have to consider that the efforts that need to be spent over the period of time are much higher than that, or will be much higher than that. I've had one of the very important things for the usability, which is trust. People need to trust it. We all know that trust is a very basic element for people to adapt systems. Please don't mix up trust with trustworthiness. Trustworthiness is a technical, it's fact-based, it's risk management. While trust is something which is psychological, which is an opinion that you have. So by implementing technical security, you won't automatically achieve trust to create user acceptance. These are completely two different things. And, it's very often mixed up in terminology that trust and trustworthiness are in there. So if you look into what trust basically is, and it's very important if you create systems and if you design systems to understand how users are going to behave in the first stage, it's all about situational trust. And in situational trust you need to have the impact, so the use case, the carrot for the user to adapt it or to accept it. And then what the users still also need is the visibility. They need to feel, hey, is it working as I expect? And if not, they feel more convenient if there is someone to punish if something failed. In digital, if you have something physical and it fails, you will recognize it simply. And then you have someone when you bought it, you can go there and shout at him and whatever, and maybe whatever you feel to be practical, but in a pure software-based cyber environment, it's very, very difficult to detect a security breach, for example, or some other kind of failure, and then it's very difficult to call the repager or whomever and say, you idiot, your products are shit or whatever. So it's not only about technology. Technology is only a little aspect when it comes to attributional trust with the competence expectation. So, of course, you need to implement security, but for trust, you need to achieve in the environment different aspects that are not so easy, so they are more environmental for that. And I want to give you an example. If you put a network-connected device into an environment, then it's not acting individually. So basically, it's operated by a user, which uses some application, and the device is collecting data, and maybe another organization is managing it for you on behalf. So you already get in a multi-stakeholder environment, also with simple tasks. And I will give you the example on the base of a car. We all know that the car industry is already having today in place very intelligent connected cars. And what they work on today is much more getting advanced. And I think it's a very practical example of how much impact and how many stakeholders need to work together to get you a single thing connected to the internet and what can be used. So if you are driving a company car, the company is owning the car. It delegates you as a person to be driver, but maybe your accounting department is able to collect the transaction logs, so the kilometers to have a driver's log in their books. Then you have the manufacturer who needs to create updates to keep the car still with functionality and security improvements on the road. You have a garage who is maintaining it, and if you have a car of the future, you need to authenticate to the car to be able to access audit information, to change settings and so on. So you need to have also a relation between the manufacturer and the garage. What is in place already today, if you crash the car, a call to an emergency organization is done. And of course, it could be also in the future that police will be asking for some data to avoid speeding cameras, so they could get it in real time, so it makes some things more practical. And insurance companies give you some boxes already today. So you see how many different roles are already in such a single use case in there. And when I say internet identity of things, all those roles need to have an identity. Your car needs to have an identity, and all the others need to have identity as well. And what is an identity? An identity is a description of the entity with having some set of attributes, and then of course the device itself has settings where, for example, access control is implemented or is defined. So the overall environment, if you talk about the cyber physical environment, is connecting a thing to the big one, to the big environment. It's not only to get some technical piece of software connected into a physical gadget, it's more like the whole environment that needs to come together. Of course, this is not something which will happen from one day to another and needs to evolve, but one of the key aspects for you as a user, from the human user-centric perspective, is that you don't want to manage each single device. You want to have a seamless environment which is having the intelligence to do whatever you think of should be done, and this also creates a lot of possible impact if it's not working according to this. So to speed up a little bit, I will show you already to the summary, because I was told that the time is not 40 minutes but only 20 minutes, so I have to skip a couple of slides, and which is not dramatically, because basically what the key message is, identity is not something which you can technically establish. It's like money. It's an ecosystem. To have the benefit of money in an environment, you need to have a lot of stakeholders working together to create the use of money. You know, what is the killer application of money? Hey, it's working everywhere. It's seamless. It's, you know, you can have it for everything. Everyone is knowing what is meant with a euro. And with identities in a cyber-physical environment, as basic as money is today. And to establish, you know how many centuries it took to create the money ecosystem with all the stakeholders, with banks, with cash management companies, with legal frameworks and so on. And now we are heading into the cyber-physical environment where we need to create identity, which is today something made of, you know, simple material, and you effectively need to create a full ecosystem, which is proving an attribute. Hey, this guy is really a doctor, or this girl is really in the situation to be able to take care of your children, and this is not there today. So identity is something like an ecosystem that need to be built up, bottom up, in parallel to really make scalability in the Internet of Things ecosystem available or possible. And the key message is that we need to establish, we need to focus from the first point that scalability is possible and that sustainability will be possible, because otherwise users won't accept the environment or the products we're trying to sell. And to get there, we need to really start from security aspects and privacy aspects from the very first day, considering these things below, like beside only connecting a device to the internet. Because if we fail, a lot of things, all the gadgets could use against us and our interests. So, I guess all of you know 1984 and how these things are connected and how all the sensors, not meant in a technical matter, were used against the humans. So effectively, if someone could break all the security mechanisms, you could get there as well. So thank you very much, and I hope I could give you some aspects, some new aspects.
Questions?
Effectively, I already used the time for the questions as well.
Well, I would have a question. How far along is the standardization of security or identity frameworks?
Well, this is already very far approached. So there is also for the identity, you have federations, which is the ecosystem of identities. You could already establish under the hood of the Chamber of Commerce a federation authority, because for federation you need an ecosystem where you have the governance aspects covered as well. So there is all the frames and the legal parts already established. So this ecosystem, the base of the ecosystem as we have it, for example, in the money environment, is already there. So now it's up to get these into real world applications and get the implementations out there.
Chamber of Commerce means national.
Well, we are also working on the European level, but as it is on a money perspective, it turns out that this will still be a competence sitting hopefully as interoperable as possible, but it will stay on the national layers.